Okay, good to go.
Okay. All right. Okay, so welcome everybody. Before we, as usual, when we kick off a conference, we have a few minutes where general chair and program chairs welcome people and say something interesting about the conference. So that's what we are going to attempt to do today. I'm Vlad Kolesnikov, general chair, and after I talk about a couple of things, then Tal Malkin and Chris Pikert will talk about the something that what PC chairs want to say. So this year we have a very round, good-looking number of registrations. As of a couple of hours ago, now it's a little different. 3/8. That's when I saw this, it was very exciting. About a third of these are student registrations, and the rest are regular registration. So the 3/8, I think, is a very lucky number, and so that's great. There are about a third of new registrations, including new regular and new member registrations, and 2/3 are renewals from previous years, I assume. So we are growing by a lot. And this is a chart that roughly gives the proportion of where people come from. So about a third of people come from the United States. The next third comes from the next 10 countries, which I guess is Europe, UK, Israel, and Canada. Maybe I'll include that, and then the rest of the countries are, make up the other third of registrations. So there's many people whom I want to thank, and I'm going to do that very briefly. My job as the general chair was very easy. Just need to manage registrations and didn't need to deal with a lot of physical aspects of organizing the conference. I did receive a lot of help from Brian Lamakia, our treasurer, and from Leo Raisin, who was the general chair last year. This was very important advice, how to navigate those things. Importantly, I want to emphasize everything else, and this is in red and big letters, was run on the non-crypto technical contributions. Running the conference was really run by Kim McKelly and Kevin McCurley. And this includes, and I listed some of the things that I know about, and there's probably 5 times more that I don't know about. Website management tool that's behind the scene operating everything, all the connectivity issues, people cannot connect, they respond to this. The Zoom and Zulip, the chat app that we're going to be using, that is really cool looking and elegant. It's all done by them. So thanks a lot. And to really drive this point, and because I discovered how to make charts in Excel, I made a really nice chart that kind of illustrates the level of contribution by me and some advisors and Kay and Kevin. So this was kind of non-crypto technical. Well, so there's crypto technical contributions, obviously, and this is the program committee and PC chairs Tal and Chris, and everybody who sent the papers. There was there were 2 days of workshops. Ran by Karmit Hazai, who is a workshops chair, and by the workshop chairs. So thanks to them. We did plan when early on, so the conference preparation starts several years ago, or at least a year before the conference becomes kind of seriously, enters the serious planning phase. So a year ago, we did not know where we're going to be, and so we seriously looked into, or seriously hoped for being in person at UCSB, and UCSB led us through this, and they were smart enough and to decide early on that's not going to happen in person. That saved a lot of effort. So I wanted to thank UCSB and people who we work with, Whitney Morris and Erica McDonald, IACR board of directors, and many others whom I asked for advice, and all of you people who are registered and contributing to the conference in all sorts of ways. There are many sponsors whose contributions are extremely important to us, and I want to list them here. They are listed on the website as well. So at the gold level, we have Entity Research, Shanghai Key Laboratory of Privacy-Preserving Computation, Amazon. At the silver level, we have Facebook and JP Morgan. And the bronze level, we have IOHK, Matrix Element, Platon, Google, IBM, and Fujitsu. Thank you very much for supporting Crypto 21 and crypto research. Now, a few words of how to connect. Most people probably, hopefully, watching it from after having logged in. But if you're watching it in a YouTube stream, maybe that will be helpful to you. To get here where we are, go to the crypto web page program, and there will be very handy big blue button, join the conference. So you have to click on that. You have to log in, and you'll get to this very cool looking dashboard. And here you can go to chat rooms, and they're appropriately named. If you want to go see the talks, then you click on the program link on the top left, and this will take you here to the program where there will be links to Zoom rooms. It's not a guarantee, but the Zoom rooms for the day are the same link, so that should maybe help. If something is confusing, you can use the link from a different session. For social and entertainment, we have this very nice puzzle that was designed by Ray Hirschfeld and Kevin McCurley. The UI there is great. You move your mouse, everything highlights, so it's great. This is a crypto themed puzzle, and as you see, Nigel Smart has already a great lead as of a few minutes ago. You can win prizes, so I'm going to do this as soon as I finish this talk. I'm going to go on and try to win the prize. The Crypto 21 papers are online. The easiest way, there's probably some other ways, but the easiest way to access them is to go to this link on the slide, ICR.org publications access.php. You'll have to log in, and from there, you'll get access to links to all the papers. I include the picture of the physical UCSB for people to take a glance, and hopefully we'll see you all there, and I'll hand off to the program chairs.
All right. Thank you, Vlad. So I'm Chris Pikert. I'm a co-program chair together with Tal Malkin, and I'll just give you a brief overview of the program for the coming 5 days. We have 103 papers. This is a record for crypto of 103 papers on a wide variety of topics in cryptography across 20 sessions in 5 days. And we want to thank all of the 58 terrific PC members, as well as the 4 advisory members, and the hundreds of external reviewers for helping to assemble a really interesting and great program for this week. We also want to emphasize that all subsequent days are starting an hour earlier. So right now it's 9:09 Pacific time. They'll be beginning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 1500 UTC for all 4 subsequent days. A couple of highlights of the program to come. We have 4 award papers that will be presented tomorrow morning in the Pacific time at the beginning of the program. That will be preceded by recognition of the Crypto Test of Time Award to Mihir Balare for his paper in Crypto 2006. We also have 2 invited talks by world leaders in their respective areas. We have Vanessa Teague talking on which e-voting problems do we need to solve. That'll be this afternoon. It's the final event of today's schedule at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, 2130 UTC. And the second invited talk is by Jens Groth, who will be talking on a world of snarks. And that's Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 1600 UTC. As usual at Crypto, we also have the rump session. That's the final event on Wednesday's schedule. That's at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 2130 UTC. And the new IACR fellows for the year will be presented at the beginning of the rump session. If you wish to present at the room session, please submit short and or funny brief announcements. There's a link in the program under the rump session that will allow you to submit your talk, and then a schedule will be forthcoming when the rump session chairs put it together. Finally, the membership meeting is the final event on a Thursday schedule. That's also at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 21:30 UTC. So I'll hand it off to Tal for a couple last remarks, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Tal Malkin. I don't have much to add. I guess two quick things. One, as part of the thanks, also thank the authors who submitted great papers and allowed us to have this great program. The selection was really hard. We have a record number of acceptances, but we also had a big record number of submissions. And the other thing I wanted to say is somebody wrote on the chat, big standing ovation for Kay and Kevin. I wanted to say the same thing. I cannot emphasize enough how much they helped us. Kevin is not here today because he's on jury duty. We hope he'll be here the rest of the days, but he helped at every step of the way, from debugging things from in the proceedings and every possible aspect. So really, all the thanks goes to Kay and Kevin. That's all I wanted to add for now. So I guess we'll hand it over to Stash for the first session.
Hello. So the first sessions on signatures is starting now. And I guess it's the same Zoom, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So the first paper is on threshold Schnorr signatures and from standard assumptions. And the paper is by François Gariot, Yashvat Kondi, Peyman Mohassel, and Valeria Nikolayenko.
Hi, can you see my screen?
Yes, we see you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Yash. This is joint work with François Gariot. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is joint work with François Gariot, Peyman Mohassel, and Valeria Nikolenko. All right. So Schnorr's signature scheme is an elegant construction with security rooted in the hardness of the discrete log problem. The idea is basically to sample a random nonce and then reveal a linear combination of the nonce and the secret key. And this linear signing equation allows for a very simple threshold signing protocol. However, it's well known that nonces must be sampled uniformly from ZQ, and even a few bits of bias across multiple signatures can be catastrophic. So this is a concern in practice because true randomness is a scarce resource. Ideally, we'd like to de-randomize this nonce generation so we have deterministic signing. There's a simple cryptographic trick for this, where you can simply sample a PRF seed alongside key generation, and when the time comes to sign a message, apply this PRF on the message to be signed to drive the nonce. Unfortunately, the same trick doesn't work directly in the threshold or multi-party setting. This is already observed by Maxwell et al. It's due to attacks of the flavor that we encounter in the literature on resettable zero knowledge, or MPC. Alternatively, we could use a PRF in, say, counter mode, and this would solve the problem for the threshold setting entirely. But this introduces a new vulnerability because the counter should not be reused, because that would be equivalent to nonce reuse. So this problem, which is termed state continuity by Pano et al., is known to be non-trivial to solve. In particular, it could be that the state of the system is consistent in every detectable way, but it's stale. This could happen due to power supply interruptions, virtual machines being loaded with old snapshots, and restoration from backups in an unsafe way in general. So we incorporate an additional statelessness requirement into our target. Here we study what it could cost to address this problem at a protocol design level. In particular, we ask how we can design a threshold Schnorr protocol that enjoys stateless deterministic signing. That is, no party needs to access fresh entropy or update state after an initial one-time distributed key generation. So it's safe to restore devices with long-term secrets. We develop new techniques for the dishonest majority setting for stateless deterministic Schnorr signing, while prioritizing standard assumptions and computational efficiency. In particular, we estimate that in the right conditions, our two-party signing protocol, or even with a few parties, should be faster than the generic systems level solution, which is to use trusted hardware. Trusted hardware, incidentally, runs in the high tens or even hundreds of milliseconds. So at a high level, this problem is solved if we have a mechanism that enforces honest nonce derivation. In particular, if you can commit to a seed and then prove that you're deriving your nonces correctly using this seed, then this is easy to solve. A recent work of Nick et al. Instantiated such a system with the custom PRFs and bullet proofs, where proofs are compact but slow to generate. In contrast, we find that the zero knowledge from goblet circuits approach of Yavorek et al. Is a good fit for our task due to our priorities. In particular, we care about lightweight computation, and garbling Boolean circuits is very efficient, especially for standardized ciphers like AES, which have relatively small Boolean circuits. And we like to match the round efficiency of Schnorr, which can be achieved by the round compression technique of Ganesh et al. So integrating Boolean circuit garbling with elliptic curve algebra is non-trivial, and there has been previous work by Chase, Ganesh, and Mohassel that explores this topic. But applying their techniques to our setting results in bottlenecks for communication and computation that don't actually lie with the garbage circuit, which is the fundamental secure computation object. Instead, the committed oblivious transfers to encode the input, and the Boolean to algebraic encoding translation is what incurs the dominant cost when applying these techniques. So in this work, we develop new techniques to push down these logistical costs so that the dominant cost is reduced to that of the garbage circuit of the PRF, which is quite efficient if you're using AES or something to derive nonces. In particular, we achieve a small constant number of exponentiations per proof in this context, and the cost of translation from biolabels to elliptic curve points is dwarfed by the garbage circuit itself. So we can phrase one of the logistical tasks as that of garbling a circuit C that's expressed as phi applied to F, where phi takes in some bit string and maps it to an elliptic curve point Z. Correspondingly, in garbage circuit form, the while labels encoding the bit string are translated to an encoding Z tilde by the garbage circuit phi tilde. And concretely, this encoding is of the form alpha Z plus beta, which is sound because alpha and beta serve as information theoretic MAC keys, and it's conducive to zero knowledge because this encoding is perfectly simulatable. The structure looks a lot like an oblivious linear evaluation, and we're basically able to make use of Gilboa's OLE techniques to construct such a Garbling gadget. So in the longer talk, you'll see how we construct committed OT from UC commitments. And as a hint, the receiver gets the setup trapdoor for one of two UC commitment instances and is able to run the straight line extractor in the real protocol to extract one of the two committed messages. And then there's some intuition on where the problems are in this context, some discussion on the different approaches, and a high-level idea of our technical ideas. So a high-level view. So thanks for your attention, and our paper can be found at the imprint, and I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you so much. I guess we don't have any. So we should postpone all the questions to the Q&A. Will be after all the talks of the sessions. That's how this is supposed to be run. So please continue posting on Zulip, and we'll move to the second talk right now. It's Hanan Killing-Alper and Jeffrey Burgess on two-round trip Schnorr multi-signatures.
Hello, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to present you our two-round trip Schnorr-based multi-signature scheme. Multi-signature scheme is a signature scheme which allows multiple parties collaboratively to sign a message, and it can be verified by anyone who has the public keys of the signers. And it consists of key generation algorithm for the signers, a signing algorithm, which is an interactive algorithm between multiple signers, which produces a signature. And there exists a key aggregation algorithm, which receives the public key of the signers and outputs the aggregated public key, and a verification algorithm, which verifies the signature with the aggregated public key. And in this paper, we constructed two-round Schnorr-based multi-signature scheme that we call DWMS. And it's a signature scheme. It's a Schnorr signature scheme, which means that the signature form is the same as the Schnorr signature, and therefore the verification of the signature is the same as the Schnorr signature. And we proved its security in the algebraic group model. And also we defined a new computationally hard problem that we call Entwine-Sum problem. And we show its hardness in the algebraic group model under the assumption that the strict logarithm problem is hard. And we believe that this problem can help it can be used to modify the Schnorr-based blind signatures or Schnorr-based multi-signature schemes, which suffers from k-sum attack. Okay, here is our protocol, the derandomized witness multi-signature, in short DWMS. Key generation process is the same as the Schnorr signature scheme, and I will explain the signing in the next slide. And key aggregation works as follows. It is the random linear combination of all public keys of the signers. And this random random scalars are necessary here because it is useful to prevent row key attacks. And actually, this helps adversary to select its randomness or its key that depends on the honest party's randomness. Therefore, actually, in our scheme, we inspire from this idea. And the verification process works as in the Schnorr signature scheme. Okay, this is the signing process of our protocol. In the first round, each party selects m random elements from ZP, and we call these random elements as witnesses. And then they compute the pre-commitments, which is the witness multiplied with the generator. Then they exchange all these pre-commitments with each other. Then second round begins. In the second round, each party generates the session ID of the signature scheme, and it consists of the public key of the signers, the message, and all pre-commitments of all signers. Then they compute the commitment of the Schnorr signature, and as you can see, it is the random linear combination of all pre-commitments. And this random coefficients comes from the random oracle H1, which receives the input of all pre-commitments of other parties. And we call this process as delinearization. Okay, after the commitment generation, it is similar to the Schnorr signature scheme. They generate the C value, which is the hash of the message, the aggregated public key, and the commitment. Then they generate the partial signature, which is the sum of delinearized witnesses plus secret key multiplied with C. And in the end, they exchange all partial signatures with each other and obtains the signature, which consists of C and S value. And here S is sum of all partial signatures. So the question here is that what this M parameter should be. And this, the answer comes from our new problem that we call Entwine-Sum problem. And first of all, I want to tell you a few words how we came up with this problem. After constructing our protocol, we wanted to attack our protocol, and we saw that if this problem is not hard, actually there exists an attack. The adversary can generate a forgery. And this problem works as follows. First of all, the challenger generates the group structure, and then it generates, it generates Q challenges where each challenge consists of random group elements, and then sends all of them to the adversary. The adversary has access to random oracles, which maps to the ZP. And in the end, the adversary outputs some elements from ZB, and some elements from an ordinary set. And if the output of the adversary satisfies this equality, then the adversary wins. And here, the important thing here is that the same linear relationship happening here should be also satisfied here also. And this linear relationship happening here is in ZB, and this is the same linear relationship happening here is in G, in group G. So therefore, we call our problem as N1. And we show that this problem is hard as long as M is greater than 1, under the assumption that this logarithm problem is hard. And we show it in the algebraic group model. And what this shows us that in our protocol, M must be at least 2. And in the paper, we show one attack when M equals to 1. It's an interesting attack. You can check the paper for that. And finally, we prove the security of our protocol DWMS, and we prove its security in AGM and in random oracle model, assuming that one more discrete logarithm problem is hard, and two N1 sum problem is hard. So in this paper, what we did is we constructed DWMS. It's an efficient two-round Schnorr-based multi-signature scheme. And also, we introduced a new problem that we call M-N1 sum problem. And as a future work, I think it's interesting to see hardness of our new problem in the standard model, and also security of our protocol in the standard model. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Hantan. We move to the next talk is also multi-signatures, Music 2 by Jonas Nick, Tim Ruffing, and Yannick Sörin. And we are running slightly behind, so I'm sorry, but...
Hey, can you see my slides?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Okay. So my name is Tim Ruffing. This is a talk about Music 2, simple two-round Schnorr multi-signatures. This is joint work with my colleague Jonas Nick at Blockstream, who's also here currently, and with Yannick Sarrat from ANSSI in France. Since the scheme that I'm going to present is very similar than the scheme, like the scheme you've seen on the previous talk, the goal of my talk, of my short talk here, is mostly to focus on the motivation for our work. And if you have more interest in our work, please see the longer talk or the paper. So the motivation for our work on multi-signatures is really multi-signatures in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, because you can use them to organize shared ownership of coins. And this is very useful, for example, just as in secure storage. If you split your key and put it on multiple devices, of course, you naturally achieve a higher level of security. But also these so-called multi-sig policies are very useful in Bitcoin to construct advanced signing policies. And basically any protocol you can build on top of Bitcoin, for example, Lightning Network, which is a payment network, can make use of efficient multi-signatures. So this is really the motivation for our work. And in a sense, the historical context of our work is that Bitcoin will soon support Schnorr signatures, really on the protocol level. And the corresponding Bitcoin improvement proposal 340 has been activated, or has been locked in, for activation in November as part of the Taproot soft fork. And the main reasons to prefer Schnorr signatures over ECDSA are provable security, okay, a little bit of efficiency, but really the main thing, I think, is that they allow easier constructions of advanced signing protocols, for example, multi-signatures. And the vision here is that basically in the base layer in Bitcoin, we have just Schnorr signature verification, which means that the nodes on the Bitcoin network will understand how to parse and process and verify in the end simple Schnorr signatures. And this simple thing in the on-chain consensus layer now enables us to deploy more complex protocols in an off-chain manner. For example, users now can get together and run a multi-signature protocol And as long as this multi-signature protocol outputs ordinary Schnorr signatures, it's compatible with the on-chain layer. And we can do the same for other protocols, for example, threshold 6, as we've seen in the first talk in this session, or you might think of blind signatures and other advanced signing protocols. And this is a nice design because, first of all, this on-chain consensus layer is kept very simple. And this is the thing that's very hard to change in Bitcoin because it's a consensus. So you only need to change it once and can run a lot of protocols. And because the only thing that ends up on chain is a simple Schnorr public key and a simple Schnorr signature per transaction, this is also good for privacy because just by looking at the chain, you can't see that maybe in multi-signature protocol or threshold signature protocols going on in the background. And last but not least, because again, everything that ends up on chain is the Schnorr public key and the Schnorr signature, everything is very efficient and compact. And to make that vision true, what we need is multi-signatures that look exactly like ordinary Schnorr signatures. And if you have a closer look at this, this has two parts. The first part is that the signature itself should be an ordinary Schnorr signature, just that it's obtained via an interactive protocol between n parties. And for the public key, we even go one step further. Here, we don't have an interactive protocol, but what we want is a non-interactive public algorithm that everybody in the world can use, given and public keys of the individual signers, everybody can compute the aggregate public key that combines all these public keys of the end signers. And our protocol that achieves these properties is called Music2. And please don't pass this slide. In fact, the protocol is, as I said, very similar as the protocol you've seen in the previous talk. Maybe ours is a little bit more efficient because you save one exponentiation here or there. But at the end, the goal of this slide is just to show you that the protocol is very simple. There's not much going on. We send a few group elements around, a few exponentiations, 3 hash function applications. But in the end, it's a very simple 2-round protocol. Yeah. So to sum up, our work is Music2. Music2 is a multi-signature scheme where signatures look like ordinary Schnorr signatures. This is great because they're compact and they enable fast verification. It's a very practical and simple 2-round signing protocol. In particular, it's a 2-round where essentially all previous schemes that are exactly compatible to Schnorr were 3-round schemes. One distinguishing feature that also distinguishes it from the protocol seen in the previous talk is that in our protocol, we prove that you can pre-compute the first round without knowing the message. That is, you can already do the first round, and then only when a message to sign arrives, you do the second round, which basically makes the protocol then non-interactive in a sense. And this is really a novelty in the discrete logarithm setting without pairings. And we proved the protocol secure under concurrent sessions under a weaker variant of one more discrete logarithm. So if you're interested in this weaker variant, please have a look at the paper. We think it's interesting on its own. And we actually provide 2 proofs. The first is in the ROM plus AGM. This is very similar to the previous talk again. And so we confirm their result, they confirm our result in a little bit. And by the way, there's even a third paper that confirms the same main technique in a threshold setting. If you're interested, see the Frost paper by Chelsea Comlow and Ian Goldberg. And also we provide a second proof in just a random oracle model without the AGM. Here the scheme is a little bit less efficient, but it's still very simple and practical. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Tim. And again, questions in 5 minutes after the last talk of the session. And now Lior Rotem and Gil Segev on tighter security for Schnorr identification and high moment forking lemma.
Thank you. So I'm Lior, and I will talk about how to get tighter security for identification and signature schemes via a new high moment forking lemma and the joint work with DLOG. So Schnorr ID and signature scheme were proposed in Schnorr back in '91. They're simple and efficient, yet allow extensions to primitives like multi-signatures, threshold signatures, and ring signatures. And all of this makes them an appealing choice, and indeed are in wide use nowadays in cryptographic protocols and messaging applications, and as we heard in the previous slide, in the previous talk, in blockchains and cryptocurrencies. Now, as for the security of Schnorr's ID and signature schemes, it's typically proven via reduction to the discrete logarithm problem. So the reduction takes in an impersonator attacking the Schnorr's ID scheme or a forger attacking the Schnorr signature scheme and transforms them into a discrete log algorithm. The issue with all of these reductions is that even though the best known attacks that we have against the Schnorr ID and signature schemes are based on the discrete log computation, the discrete log algorithm that we get from the reduction performs not as well as the impersonator or forger that we started off with. So the reductions are non-tight, in other words. And note that this is not a mere theoretical issue, but it has practical implications. So when you set the parameters of your scheme, and in particular the group size, you have to choose between a larger group, which means the graded efficiency, or a smaller group, which means, in this case, the graded provable security. So in more detail, essentially all of the reductions in the standard model to the discrete logarithm problem follow some variant of the forking lemma introduced by Poincaré and Stern and later generalized by Bellaire and Neven. And all of these reductions suffer from what can be called the square root loss, seemingly inherently. So what do we mean by that? So for example, in Schnorr's ID scheme, one variant of the forking lemma due to Bellaire and Neven takes an impersonator that runs in time t and has advantage epsilon in breaking the security of the scheme, and transforms it into a DLOG algorithm that runs in roughly the same time, but has success probability, which is epsilon squared. So this is potentially much less than the success probability of epsilon that we can hope for. So what does this tell us about the security of the Schnorr's ID scheme? So in the generic group model, already Shoup proved that the success probability of the DLOG algorithm epsilon prime is bounded by its running time t prime squared over p, where p is the size of the group. So if we work in a group in which we assume this bound hold, like in some elliptic curve groups, this implies that the advantage epsilon of the impersonator is bounded by something like the square root of t squared over p. And note that this is potentially much greater than the bound that we can hope for via discrete log computation, which is the best known attack. This bound is t squared over p. So there's a square root loss between the provable security that we get and the security bound that we can hope for. And a similar issue arises in Schnorr signatures. So here, the success probability of the DLOG algorithm that we get is epsilon squared over QH, where QH is the number of random oracle queries issued by the forger. And we also pay for this QH in the security bound we get for Schnorr signatures. So the bound what we get is the square root of QH times t squared over p, which is even greater than the bound that we can hope for of t squared over p. So this is a square root loss that reductions to the DLOG problem in the standard model encounter. And it should be mentioned that there are other approaches for proving the security of Schnorr's ID and signature schemes that don't go through a standard model reduction to the DLOG problem. So in idealized models, there are tight security proofs both in the generic group model and in the algebraic group model. But the drawback of this approach, of course, is that both the generic group model and the algebraic group model considerably restrict the class of adversaries that are under consideration. In the standard model, Bellaire and Day recently proved the type restriction, but not to the discrete logarithm problem, but rather to a new problem which they introduced called the multi-base discrete logarithm problem. So this is tight, but the drawback of this approach, of course, is that it doesn't consider the well-studied discrete logarithm problem, but rather a newly introduced interactive problem. So this leaves open the question of, can the square root barrier that we described before be circumvented based solely on the hardness of the well-studied DLOG problem in the standard model? So what we do in this work is we answer this question in the affirmative by providing tighter security bounds for both Schnorr's ID and signature schemes based solely on the hardness of the DLOG problem in the standard model. So at first, what we do is we refine the assumed hardness of the DLOG problem in the standard model by inspecting its generic hardness, so to speak, and pinpointing one key aspect of it, and then distilling from it a standard model assumption. This is a high-level description. Then we complement this assumption with a new proof technique, which generalizes the forking lemma of Cheval-Ancel to a high moment variant. And then we use both the refined assumption and the new proof technique in order to derive tighter bounds for Schnorr's ID and signature schemes. So for Schnorr ID scheme, we prove the bound of t squared over p raised to the power of 2/3, which improves upon the previous bound of t squared over p raised to the power of 1/2. And we get a similar bound for Schnorr signatures with the multiplicative factor of QH raised to the power of 2/3. And this also improves upon the previously known bound in a similar manner. And finally, I should mention that our approach and techniques apply not only to Schnorr's ID and signature schemes, but in fact to any ID and signature scheme that is obtained from a Sigma protocol in a natural manner. And the prime example is the Okamoto ID and signature scheme. So I'll conclude with just putting the results in perspective. So our result is the first to break the square root barrier that we described before when proving the security of Schnorr's ID and signature scheme based solely on the hardness of the DLOG problem in the standard model. So previous results either encountered the square root barrier or provided tight bounds, but either in idealized model or based on a new assumption rather than the DLOG assumption. So this is just to put things in perspective. These are again our contributions, and with that I will conclude. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lior. So we move to questions and answers. I have to confess I'm a little lost in which questions that were asked. There are two threads remain unanswered and which are still outstanding. Somebody asked, Dedre asked about relevance to Frost, Schnorr-based threshold signature. That was the question to the first talk. Is this still, did you guys answer this?
Yes, I think so. I'm sorry, which question is this?
Oh, well, Dedre asked whether, what's the impact of your deterministic Schnorr, threshold Schnorr on the Frost scheme?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe that was for the second and third talks, because I think Frost is comparable to the two-round schemes.
Okay,
I think Frost is another, yeah.
So it's not a threshold. Okay, I'm not familiar with Frost, so I don't know. The question makes sense that it's a threshold signature and not a multi-state. So
maybe
what's your part?
I could try to give an answer, maybe.
Thank you.
I guess for both the second and the third talk. So both the second and the third talk present schemes that are really in the multi-signature setting, which means, so in contrast to threshold signatures, that means you really have an n of n signature where all n signers need to be present, and whereas in threshold signatures you only need some subset T of n signers to be present. And Frost is also the paper that I mentioned in my talk that takes the same idea of how to construct a two-round scheme that has been used in the second and the third talk here, and transfers it to the threshold setting and uses it to build a threshold scheme again with some different trade-offs, different optimizations, and different results in terms of provable security, I'd say. So basically, Frost is the same idea in the threshold setting. It makes a little bit sense to distinguish the settings, because if you focus on multi-signatures only, you can do some tricks that you can't do in the threshold setting. For example, having this non-interactive public key algorithm or public key aggregation algorithm, where where everybody can take a number of n keys and aggregate them in a non-interactive way without help of the actual signers involved. This is something, at least for Schnorr signatures, you can do only in the multi-sig setting. So it makes sense to have specialized scheme for multi-sig or for the multi-signature setting.
Okay. Thank you. Rohan is asking whether the Schnorr signatures can be implemented for Ethereum protocol. That sounds like a implementation issue, so I don't know if somebody has a take on it. Well,
yeah, I think Ethereum plans to use Schnorr signatures in future. Probably, yeah. Therefore, it can be used, I believe.
Maybe a follow-up question to Tim or Handan. If you're so the multi-signatures is that the group is fixed right at the beginning of the protocol. It's a 2-round protocol, so you have to know the group, and the threshold is that only so potentially not everybody has to participate, and still the signature is generated.
Yeah.
So is threshold in a sense like strictly better?
The main difference from threshold signatures from multi-signature schemes is that in multi-signature there is no threshold, so even one party can generate a signature. But in threshold signature, certain number of parties should be available to obtain a valid signature. So this is the difference, main difference.
Right, and there's a setup. Sorry, right? Like you don't have setup in multi-signatures, right? So everybody generates their key separately.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at least that's what I meant in the reply to my last question. That this is for example, one example of a thing that you can't do in a threshold scheme, at least not in our Schnorr setting. So that's why I think threshold is not strictly better.
I have a question to people on the first talk. So Yashwant, so you're using these methods that give a zero knowledge proof through garbled circuits. The party who is garbling the AES in this, right? Because it's a combination. First is an AES and then exponentiation. And you have to prove that you perform the AES and the exponentiation on top of the result, right? So is the garbler of that AES circuit, does he have to prove that that the AES garbled circuit is performed correctly? Or somehow you avoid this this step? Because it's not an inexpensive step, is it?
Yeah, so this is like a nice pick from the zero knowledge from garbage circuits of paper of Yaurek, Koshbaum, and Olandi. The garbler is the verifier, and the verifier has no private input. So after the prover, whose evaluator is done evaluating the circuit, he can, let's say, commit to his output, and then the verifier opens the randomness that he used for the garbling. So that the prover just checks that the verifier created the garbage circuit honestly, because there are no private inputs to the garbage circuit.
Oh, the garbling party is not the one with the key.
The evaluating party is the one with the key.
Ah, okay. And the role of the alpha beta, it sounded like a MAC, right? So that's also used in the proof of correctness?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that you should be unable to forge a garbled output. So if you're able to produce a garbled output that decodes to the claimed nonce, the claimed value, then that means that you evaluated the garbage circuit with the correct input.
Okay. if I'm missing some questions that is posted and still unanswered, could the author just speak up?
I see one question in Zoom chat. How is the end-find sum problem related to the classical K-list problem and Ross problem? Actually, as a reminder, or for the people who doesn't know what K-list problem or K-sum problem is, that in K-sum problem there are some number of lists and which are filled with some random number, and the adversary should find some elements from each list where the sum of all elements are equal to 0. And it's not a hard problem.
I don't know if it's just me, but Handan broke off, right?
Do you hear me?
It's just you, Stash.
Do you hear me?
I hear you, Handan.
Okay.
I think maybe Stash broke off.
Okay. And so it is, this K-sum problem is not hard problem. It can be solved efficiently. But the difference from this problem, the difference between our problem and K-sum problem is that our problem is hard, and we can show it is hard under the assumption of this logarithm problem is hard. But when the parameter m equals to 1, I believe that it can be reduced to a K-sum problem, because the attack that we did to our protocol basically uses the attack, basically uses the solution of algorithm to solve the K-sum problem. Therefore, I think our problem can be reduced to the K-sum problem when m equals to 1. Yes, that's all.
Thank you, Handan. I wanted to ask Lior, you mentioned that you have that in the paper you discussed also generalization of this approach with the second moment. So, I mean, is it that if you consider assumptions on the higher moments, does this do you get closer and closer to the optimal bound?
No, so essentially, you know, if you consider, so our assumption, roughly speaking, means it says that the advantage of any discrete log algorithm in computing discrete logs, or the success probability, is dominated by the second moment of this algorithm's running time. So this is indeed the case for this in the generic group model. So this is seems like a reasonable assumption for the discrete log problem. But you could, assume weaker assumptions, either specifically for discrete log computation, that consider higher moments of this algorithm's running time, and then you get a weaker assumption, but you pay for it in the security bounds that you get. So even if you consider that it's dominated by higher moments, you get closer and closer, not to the optimal bound, but to square root bound. But one benefit of this generalization is that it can maybe be applied to other problems, not necessarily the discrete logarithm problem. Right? So if you have an ID scheme or a signature scheme that is obtained from a Sigma protocol from a different relation, not for the discrete log relation, then you can use maybe a different assumption in order to get better bounds than the straightforward forking lemma rewinding bounds.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Are there any other questions, or shall we break for a quick break? Okay. So we'll reconvene